The Joshlin Smith trial adjourned a short while ago with the first accused, I Jacquen Appollis, once more on the stand. Now, Appollis was being questioned in the trial within a trial on the claims that he was actually tortured by police and smothered with a black bag and beaten with batons in order to confess. Both Appollis and his friend Steveno Van Rhyn want statements that they made to police on the 5th of March last year to be declared inadmissible in court. Van Rhyn earlier said parts of his so-called confessions and what he told the doctor about his injuries were actually not true. He says he gave those versions because he was actually threatened and very afraid that he would face further assault or even worse.
Did you report to Mr. Smith what your injuries were?
Het die vir my Smith ingelig oor die beserings wat hy opgedoen het? No, not the day in question.
Why not?
Hoekom nie?
Ek was nog 'n bietjie bang geweest.
I was still a little bit scared.
At this time, Mr. Appollis, you now have a legal representative there. Correct? He confirmed his instructions, he confirmed he's on record for you. You have a lawyer.
Teen hierdie tyd, meneer Appollis, hy het 'n regsverteenwoordiger. Hy het sy aanstelling bevestig. Hy het ook bevestig dat hy verdedig vir u. Correct?
Why didn't you report to him?
Kom het nie vir hom laat weet nie.
En daarin was ek nog bang geweest want die selle mense, die selle spede manne het vir ons vervoer van die polisiestasie af tot by die hof.
I was still scared at the time because the same police officers, the same detectives transported us to court.
The detectives you speak of is Captain Fortuin, Captain Lombard and Sergeant Fortuin, is that correct?
Die speders waarna hy verwys is kaptein Lombard, sowel as Sergeant Fortuin.
En nog ander twee.
And two additional ones.
Who are they?
Ek ken hulle nie by die naam nie, maar hulle gesigte ken ek want hulle was die twee wat by my gewees het die tyd toe hulle my aanraak.
I do not know their names, but I can recognize their faces because they were the two that were present the time when I was assaulted.
Were they in court on the 7th?
Was hulle by die hof gewees die 7de?
Hulle het ook van die vervoere, ons was 4 vervoere gewees, 4 karre. Hulle was een was in dieselfde vervoer wat ek
we were 4 vehicles. One was in one of the vehicles.
Did they ever attend court whilst we were busy with this trial?
Het ek ooit die hof bygewoon terwyl ons besig is met hierdie verhoor?
Nee.
No.
When did you tell Mr. Smith about your assault?
Wanneer het jy vir my Smith vertel van die aanranding op u?
Ons tweede verskyning.
At our second appearance.
All right, let's now get the latest with the SABC News reporter Vanessa Poonah, who's been following this trial within a trial. Vanessa, a very good afternoon. Good to have you with us. So before you give us the weekly wrap of what transpired at the trial within a trial on the Joshlin inquest, take us through what actually was uncovered today as Appollis continued with his testimony. And are you able to confirm to us at this stage that there is actually no footage by the police in the possession of police of said interrogation of the accused?
Alicia, good afternoon to you. Let me start with your second part of your question first. What we did see in the trial, within the trial, was indeed videotaped statements that, of course, of Steveno Van Rhyn, as well as I Jacquen Appollis. These are the video versions of the statements that they had handed in, or the state handed into court, which the state wants to be allowed as confessions, of course. You've said it there just now. At the end of the day, at the end of the trial within this trial, Judge Nathan Erasmus will have to determine whether indeed the two accused were of sound and sober mind when these statements were taken. Just if I can refer you back to yesterday, for example, the advocate for Steveno Van Rhyn contended that at times he was sleeping during most of the statement taking. Of course, that's something that the court will have to look at. We did see on the video there were times when he, especially towards the later part of the statement, where he would rest his head in his hands, and at sometimes his eyes stayed closed for a few seconds. Of course, that formed the basis of her questioning yesterday. And then, of course, today what happened earlier this morning, the state indeed closed its case in the trial within a trial, after which Jacquen Appollis was put on the witness stand by his defense counsel advocate, Fani Harmsa. He was led on what had transpired when he was brought to the sea border officers on the 4th of March last year. He then told the court that Captain Lombard, Wesley Lombard, he's the investigating officer in this case, then told him to go with 4 or 5 men to a room. And that's where, according to Appollis, he was then severely assaulted. He said that he was handcuffed. An aluminium rod was put between his knees, and he was beaten as well as suffocated with a black bag. He was asked where Joshlin is, and when he said that he did not know, he was indeed beaten. Only later, according to Appollis, when they asked him whether he knows somebody by the name of Makalima, who lives in Middelpoort, and he said yes, he felt some sort of relief, because according to him, that's when it felt as though the beating was stopped and they were interested in what he had to say about Makalima. He also contends that he accompanied the police to the house of Makalima, this while, of course, the investigating officer, as well as Officer or Sergeant Fortuin, who had earlier testified, said that he had remained at the sea border office. So, of course, what we see now is really the state trying to take a dig at his credibility. Of course, if the court finds that the witness, for example, is not a credible witness, it could then strengthen the state's case for these so-called confessions, the statements that were taken on the 4th of March, to be admitted as evidence into the case.
Very interesting indeed. What else can you tell us about today's proceedings, Vanessa? And also, what happens next week? Is there any new witness that we should know about that will be taking the stand? For example, the doctor that is, of course, addressed in this matter, where, of course, the accused says he gave him a different version when explaining his injuries.
Well, Dr. Nal did last week testify via video link, and that's because he was out of the country. He was the doctor that took what is known as a post-statement J88. So the J88 is a form on which the injuries or anything wrong with the person is noted. And of course, he did that examination. So, of course, what the state was grilling the accused, Mr. Appollis, on today was that if he was beaten to the extent that he was for hours, surely then there would be more injuries noted on that J88 statement. That was something that the state put to the accused. He also made mention, Alicia, that he was not questioned on that day by Captain Lombard or Sergeant Fortuin, and these two witnesses had already, as I've mentioned just now, testified in the trial within the trial. Captain Lombard saying that Sergeant Fortuin took the lead with the questioning, and he would pop in from time to time. He would be between the sea border officers as well as at the FCS officers. Also, just now, if I can just go into it a little bit, he was questioned about, and especially Judge Erasmus put it to him, that according to his version, these two officers would then have imposed themselves upon the case if the accused's version is to be believed, because the judge asked him if this was indeed the case, and they, as experienced police officers, would know that this matter would go to the High Court, that they indeed would be called to come and testify and be grilled in the witness stand. And then the judge asked Mr. Appollis whether he himself would do something like that, and to which he then answered, no, that it makes sense, but he, after thinking about it, that he would not do that. Why? The court asked him, would these two policemen do it? He answered he does not know. And the last part of your question, in terms of what's expected next week, court will not be sitting on Monday. This, of course, as the new term starts, Judge Erasmus had made it clear that he will have to be in Cape Town on Monday. A court will then resume next Tuesday at 10 a.m. And we do expect that the state will continue with its cross-examination of Mr. Jacquen Appollis. We don't know how long that will take. The judge has made it very clear to all parties since the start of this trial that he wants this matter not to be dragged out, but to be wrapped up, but also to give everybody a fair chance. We also know that Steveno Van Rhyn is also expected to testify in this trial within a trial.
Thank you so much for that wrap and update. That is SABC News reporter there, Vanessa Poonah, with a wrap of the Joshlin Smith kidnapping and trafficking trial within a trial in Saldanha Bay.